Jussie Smollett played a stupid game with white supremacy, and now he's going to receive his reward.
Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets from the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com today.
Jussie Smollett was sentenced to 150 days in jail and was told that he had to pay fines and restitution as related to being convicted for filing a false police report in connection with a 2020 assault that did not take place. Now, your Jussie Smollett, in the aftermath of being sentenced for jail time, is getting emotional, and he went on in a rant where he talked about how he wasn't where he was in a completely clear mental state if something happens to him, and he also wanted to go on and play the race card by saying the only reason why he was being sentenced was because he was black. Now, I will concede that your Jussie Smollett is only being sentenced to this 150 days possibly because he was black. However, I believe the real reason why Jussie Smollett wound up in all of this trouble is because your Jussie Smollett played a stupid game with white supremacy, and he won a completely jacked up prize at the end of playing that game. Now, the game that your Jussie Smollett tried to play with white supremacy was trying to get all of these white people in Hollywood to pay attention to him and tried to make himself out to be a bigger star by playing the victim card. And your Jussie Smollett, what he did was he tried to stage an incident that would show that he was the victim of a hate crime. Now, your Jussie Smollett went out here and staged this alleged hate crime in Chicago, a primarily blue state, and stated that these MAGA supporters attacked him at 2 a.m. as he was going out to go get a sandwich. And he said that these MAGA supporters in the blue state of Chicago, blue city of Chicago, they poured this bleach all over him and they tied a noose around his neck. And he thought that this story was going to gain him some sympathy. Unfortunately, a lot of people and police detectives started doing some critical thinking as related to the details of his story. Now, the biggest detail of his story that made no sense was the fact that he had said this incident took place in Chicago, which was a primarily blue city. There aren't many MAGA supporters in Chicago who are these big time racists because the city is a blue city that votes blue no matter who all throughout the year. So that was one detail that made a hole in your Jussie Smollett story. The other was the time of this incident. Now, your Jussie Smollett said that this incident took place at 2 a.m. as he was going out to Subway to get a sandwich. But at 2 a.m. on the night of the incident, it was the coldest night in Chicago. So there wouldn't be many people on the street at 2 a.m. So there was no way that this incident could take place in a blue city and where there would be next to no MAGA supporters of the Trump candidacy. So the whole story started to fall completely apart. Now, in addition to it being a blue city and it being the coldest day of the year with negative 20-degree temperatures, your Jussie Smollett went out here and was trying to make it look like he was this victim of this hate crime. But the whole thing is, he had done some things that would not be consistent with a victim of a hate crime. He had gone out here and still kept the noose around his neck, and that would not be in character of somebody who was a victim of a hate crime. They would have taken such a noose completely off because they would not, because the natural reflex would be to take that noose off to allow themselves to breathe. So a lot of the details of Jussie Smollett's story fell completely apart, and as the details of his story fell completely apart, that's when prosecutors wanted to go out here and prosecute Jussie Smollett, and they wanted to prosecute Jussie Smollett because he had committed a serious crime. And he had committed a serious crime by filing this false police report, because had he gone out here and polarized your MAGA supporters or Trump supporters and groups like Black Lives Matter on the left, this could have led to a serious situation where people's lives could have been put in jeopardy. And that's where the serious problem with me, with Jussie Smollett, is. He's sitting here, he's putting people at risk by playing race cards, and the reason why he's compromising his ethics by playing these race cards isn't because he wants to go out here and do something as related to help make putting one race against the other. It is something as petty as trying to get more exposure for himself and trying to elevate his star in Hollywood. And that right there is completely egregious for a guy to go out here and put people's lives at risk playing a race card to get more exposure for himself in an effort to try to get an expanded role on an old show like Empire. Because the main reason why your Jussie Smollett went out here and staged this entire incident was because he wanted to go out here and get more exposure for himself, get some more sympathy, and he hoped that Lee Daniels, the producer of Empire, would give him an expanded role on the show and give him a raise. Now, your Jussie Smollett was making $60,000 an episode on Empire in 2020 when the show was on the air, and that wasn't enough money for him. So he set out to go to Chicago, where parts of Empire are filmed, stage this incident, play the race card, and put your MAGA supporters who don't even watch Empire against black people on the left, like Black Lives Matter. And this is just a completely unethical and completely egregious, but this is the unethical lengths that Jussie Smollett went in his effort to elevate his star. And what's really disturbing about your Jussie Smollett is he's sitting there after compromising all of his ethics to elevate himself. He still wants to go out here and play the victim, but instead of trying to play the victim where he was a victim of so-called alphabet violence that never happened, what he wants to do now that he's been convicted and now sentenced is now say that the reason why he was sentenced was because he was black. Well, that might be a partial reason for why he was sentenced, but he would not be in this situation at all if he didn't decide to play a stupid game with white supremacy. Now, your Jussie Smollett's stupid game that he wanted to play with white supremacy was he wanted to go out here and try to play the race cards so that he could go out here and make himself a winning hand. Now, your Jussie Smollett, who was a biracial black alphabet man, what he thought was he was going to play the cards of intersectionality and play on his sexual orientation as a way to gain sympathy and favor with white supremacy. But he didn't understand that when it comes to white supremacy doesn't want to play by the rules, especially when it comes to black people. And when they saw Jussie Smollett, they did not see anything as related to intersectionality. They saw that he was black first, and the reason why they were going to punish your Jussie Smollett was because he was black first, and they wanted to send a message to your Jussie Smollett that you're not as smart as you think you are, because that's what your Jussie Smollett was trying to do. He was trying to show that he was going to be smarter than white supremacy, and he thought he was going to come in here and play the stupid game of trying to play cards with white supremacy, not understanding that all of white supremacy's deck is completely marked, and it's marked where they always win every time. So you can go out here and try to play a game with white supremacy where you're going to try to make yourself out to be some sort of victim, but white supremacy is going to always ensure it's going to win, and they ensured themselves a win at the expense of your Jussie Smollett, who wound up practically losing everything by gambling with the House of White Supremacy, where the House always has all the cards marked and they always have you set up to lose. Now, your Jussie Smollett, as a result of going out here and compromising his ethics with this marketing stunt, he not only wound up losing his job on Empire, I believe indirectly he got the show Empire canceled, because Empire was on one of those shows that was on the bubble and the ratings were falling very precipitously, but Fox decided, hey, we don't want any of this trouble with this failing show, so they canceled this show, and a whole lot of actors wound up losing their jobs as a result, indirectly, of your Jussie Smollett. And after this, your Jussie Smollett wound up with his career completely over, because after this incident, nobody can trust your Jussie Smollett on the set of their production. So basically, your Jussie Smollett wound up playing the stupid game with white supremacy, and he wound up costing everybody their jobs on the show. And now he wants to try to play the race cards again, talking about how he's only in jail because he's black, but the whole thing is he wouldn't be in jail right now if he had not played stupid games with white supremacy. Had he not played stupid games with white supremacy, he would not be in this situation, and he's sitting there now trying to make himself out to be a victim as he's put inside of the criminal justice system. And as he's put in the criminal justice system, he's trying to go out here and make all these melodramatic statements to try to say that he's all right, and if something happens to him, it's not his fault. But the whole thing is, he wouldn't be in this situation had he not gone out here and pulled this marketing stunt. He would not be inside of the Cook County Jail for 150 days, having to try to worry about Bubba, Tiny, and Mr. Peabody going out here and thinking about trying to trade him for some hot and sour ramen noodles, some Little Debbie snack cakes, some packs of Oreo cookies, cups of coffee, or cans of Dr. Pepper. No, he would not be in that situation had he not just basically gone out here and done what any other actor would have done, and that is go to your executive producer and set up a meeting with them to discuss where your role is going on the show. That is what every other actor does when they're out here. They understand that if they're not satisfied with their role on the show, they set up a meeting with the executive producer and they have a conversation with the executive producer about where their direction is going on the show as related to their character. And if they wanted to talk about compensation, they would have that discussion in that meeting. But your Jussie Smollett, he did not want to go out here and do business with Lee Daniels by setting up that meeting. No, what he wanted to do was go out here and get maximum sympathy points, hoping that he could create a covert contract with the public that would go out here and advocate on his behalf, and then that public would go out here with their sympathy, and what that would do is enable him to have some sort of leverage to go out here and negotiate a better deal with Lee Daniels. But that whole covert contract fell apart because, again, your Jussie Smollett played a stupid game with white supremacy, not understanding white supremacy plays both sides of the argument, and when they play both sides of the argument, they are guaranteed to win, because when you play a stupid game with white supremacy, chances are you're going to wind up losing, and losing absolutely everything, because again, white supremacy controls both sides of the argument. And while some say his sentence is unfair, And I will say that, possibly it could be unfair for him to be sentenced like this, because white guys who pull false police reports and white women who pull false police reports, they don't get any jail time. But the whole thing is, your Jussie Smollett just didn't want to believe that this could happen to him, because he thought, oh, I'm not black, I'm all of these other things. And the whole thing is, he didn't understand, again, white supremacy did not see him as any of those other groups. First, they saw him as black first, and they are going to punish you for being black and thinking you're so smart. And this is all about sending a message to not only musty, dusty Jussie, but to any other black bootlick in Hollywood or any part of politics, that if you try to play our game and try to outsmart us at our game, we'll go out here and put you in your place and show you where you are a boy like anyone else. This is a message being sent to everyone with your musty, dusty Jussie Smollett, who made the major mistake of thinking, oh, I will go out here and compromise my already compromised ethics, try to run a game on white supremacy, try to go out here and try to gain sympathy for being just a common person. And what he wanted to do was show that he was going to get special status. But the whole thing is, he wound up losing everything, because the white supremacist does not see you as special at all. And that is the message sent with Jussie Smollett's sentencing. He thought, oh, I'll just go out here and try to gain some sympathy. And the whole thing is, white supremacy is not sympathetic to black people. That's the other mistake your Jussie Smollett made. Oh, they're sympathetic to black people. No, white supremacy is not sympathetic to black people. It doesn't care what happens to black people. And if a black person tries to outsmart them, they have ways of dealing with black people, and that is by making an example of a black person like your Jussie Smollett, who is finally getting what many call his N-word moment, but he's only getting this moment because he played the stupid game, and he's getting the fucked up prize as the reward for playing the stupid game. Now, if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. And if you want to pick up some of my books on the SJS Direct imprint, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, the John Haynes series, and the books of the Smith-Torella trilogy, you can find those books on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find them on Smashwares, the iBookstore, and Google Play. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, subscribe.
Now available in paperback and Kindle, Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Learn how to avoid predatory females like Instagram models and e-girls in their virtual con games with Stop Simping in Cyberspace. Get your copy of Stop Simping in Cyberspace in paperback and Kindle today.